Hello and welcome to Destination Draft Day. Thanks for joining us. We are excited to talk about the draft. It is now officially happened and over. 2023 season fully ahead, but of course we're going to take this episode to mostly recap, talk about some news around the NFL with some big signings, big suspensions. So we got some things to talk about. But before we dive into any of it, Nick Durst, how you doing today?
Michael, I'm doing all right. As everybody knows, I'm a big Mets fan. And Mets got rid of Robinson Cano, so I'm thrilled for that. Giants, I don't know, very head-scratching day two. We can get into that in a little bit. I don't know what they're doing there, but the draft came and gone, and it was a really different draft. It wasn't as much buzz and excitement come out of it. And I guess it really had to do with the fact that quarterbacks, the big names just weren't there, and we only had one quarterback go in the first round.
Yeah, I was surprised to see the quarterbacks fall. I think that was something that most people outside of probably team front offices didn't expect. I know that the NFL was lower on the quarterback class than most other classes, but I mean, I'm surprised to see where, it was a Kenny Pickett just didn't go until 20, and then the rest of the quarterbacks didn't go until round 3. I mean, that is not at all what I was expecting. I guess there's a little bit of writing on the wall with Baker Mayfield just not really having any interest at all, even though he's a solid quarterback. I mean, it felt like he would probably be someone that if he were offered in the beginning of the offseason, teams would have at least given up like a second for him. And I guess it's just a lot of teams feel somewhat satisfied with their quarterback standing right now. I don't know how, if you're a team like Seattle, you can think that, but more power to him. I think Seattle probably is in the front driver's seat for Baker Mayfield now because Cleveland's just desperate to get rid of him.
Let's not forget Jimmy Garoppolo coming back to the 49ers to back up at this point. Just, who saw that coming? So, of the quarterbacks that went, who do you think ended up in the best spot for them?
Yeah, I mean, I love a lot of quarterback landing spots. You look at guys like Malik Willis, who went to Tennessee. I think that works out extremely well. You look at some of the other teams that maybe didn't have the capital put in, but I mean, getting Sam Howell in Washington, I've been saying that's been one of my favorite fits for this quarterback class. So the fact that they were able to get him later on, it depends on what the intention is. If they plan on trying to make him into a starter, then yeah, I love it. But if they're just like, look, you're a backup for us, we want Carson Wentz to be the guy, and you're going to have to kind of sink or swim on your own, then we'll see. Because that's kind of what happens when you start picking these quarterbacks round 5, round 6, even round 3 sometimes. You're just kind of looking at them as backups, and you're saying, look, if you develop into anything, great, but we're not going to be putting in that time and investment to make sure that you get there as compared to if we were to spend a first-round pick on you like the Steelers did with Kenny Pickett. So there's going to be some interesting things to watch out for, but, I mean, I love Sam Howell with Washington. I love Malik Willis with Tennessee. Matt Corral has a chance to do something, but again, if Carolina kind of falls apart, they could easily be picking top 5, and they aren't going to pass on a quarterback because they love someone.
So what do you think about Desmond Ritter? He could start next year? Not this
I think Ritter is going to have a chance to get some starts and some opportunity there. I think Mariota's going to start the season, but Ritter will get the opportunity probably, let's say they lose 4 of their first 5 or something. Then game 6, I could see Ritter kind of stepping in and being the quarterback for the rest of the season. I think Atlanta's going to try to ride with him. I don't know if it's necessarily that they think he is a long-term answer, and if they're just awful and they have the number 1 pick, then things can change. But I think, based on what we've seen from Atlanta so far, I think they're big on trying to build the rest of the roster. So we'll see something like Houston where you could argue that they should go QB instead of sticking with Davis Mills, but they liked what they saw out of Mills, so they want to kind of build the rest of the team. If Mills doesn't make that next step, then sure, maybe they can go back to the well and get a quarterback. But I think that's kind of the situation for Atlanta. If Ritter shows some promise, then they're going to try to just continue building the rest of this roster that desperately needs help, and we'll see how Ritter does in the process of 2 years rather than just looking to replace him right away.
So I think Mariota is going to have a really good year on the team. And I also think the Steelers should start Trubisky because I think Trubisky, say what you want about his skill set, but he's a proven winner. He's got a winning record. Took the Bears to the playoffs twice. you start with him. There's no reason to rush things with Pickett. I think Pickett is definitely their future guy there. You draft him, Pittsburgh guy. You don't have to move up or anything. Perfect fit. I think that's the best fit in the draft. But I think Trubisky and Mariota are going to play really well. So I'm not really sure who I could see from this QB class starting week one. The last few years, we've always seen multiple quarterbacks starting week one for the draft class.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the big thing about Matt Corral in Carolina round 3. I mean, Darnold is probably going to be the starter to begin the season, but
Crazy.
yeah, I mean, do you really expect Carolina to stick with him long term, especially with the chaos that we've kind of seen from his play? I mean, if the offensive line's improved and he takes that next step, then maybe, he holds on to the job. But more than likely, Darnold's going to have his Darnold moments where he plays fine and then he makes some bad errors and kind of goes downhill. And from there, how long can Carolina put up with that? I know you aren't rushing to put a third string rookie in, but if Darnold's not stepping up to the plate, then you kind of need to roll with Matt Corral, see what he can do, run that RPO offense that he excels in at Ole Miss, and see if you can kind of turn that offense around. And I think it's a pretty nice landing spot, honestly. I think they've revamped their offensive line pretty well. Having Christian McCaffrey is extremely huge for just, any quarterback to just be able to dump off to the running back and get 60 yards a game on it at the very least. DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, pretty solid wide receivers. They have some young guys who, I didn't love as prospects, but they could become something in Shi Smith or Terrace Marshall Jr. So there's plenty of possibilities for Carolina to potentially make that next step. And it sounds like after getting Matt Corral in round 3, they're no longer interested in the Baker Mayfield or Jimmy Garoppolo. So the only reason that I'd see them possibly adding another quarterback is if they are interested in Debo and then they get Jimmy as part of the package or something.
You can always sign Cam Newton.
Yeah, always up.
I think most teams very smartly are just waiting for the Browns to release Baker Mayfield because that's what they're going to have to do. They're not going to go to training camp with Mayfield coming in as the backup, even though I think he's going to I think if he came as the backup, he's going to start the first 6 games of the season because I think Watson's going to get suspended. So I think once Mayfield's released, I think somebody will sign him between the Panthers and the Seahawks most likely. But the Giants would be a nice landing spot for Mayfield too for a year or so.
Yeah, I think there's certainly a lot of teams that should consider Mayfield. You look at Giants, you look at Seattle, you look at, just plenty of teams where, I think he'd be an improvement. Detroit possibly even would be an interesting one because I don't love Goff long term. I know he looked all right to end the season, but I think there's still an improvement to be had with a guy like Baker at quarterback. But it seems like the NFL itself is kind of iffy on Baker. Maybe it's just the fact that he's a 1-year deal, so you would have to pay him if it worked out, or you'd either have to kind of just take the loss on it. So maybe that's the big thing. And if he gets cut, they'll give him a longer deal, maybe a 3-year thing to actually feel like they're getting some payback for taking the risk on him. But speaking of Detroit, I want to get your thoughts on them not deciding to grab a quarterback. And if it's not round 1, I understand, but getting into round 2, they had an option, they passed on everyone. Round 3, they had an option, they passed on everyone. Round 4, they had the chance to get guys like Sam Howell, and they passed on everyone. Round 7, they could have taken a flyer on Carson Strong, but they passed. What are your thoughts on Detroit's decision to stick with Jared Goff, pass on the rookies? Do you think this is more of a, okay, we'll see where we're at next year and try to get a quarterback then? Or do you think this is a sign of faith to Jared Goff?
Yeah, well, obviously, they get Hutchinson with the second pick, which is tremendous. We can talk about the Jaguars in a bit. I think they're heading in a bad direction right now. So that was great. And, they didn't love any of the quarterbacks. I can't blame them. I think they're going to go with Goff this next year. If he wins for them, great. They'll stick with him. If not, they know they're probably going to be picking the top 5, top 10 next year. So they can go ahead and get that first-round pick. They have the Rams picks that they got in the Stafford trade they could use for trades as well. So next year they're going to have a high pick, and they could also trade up. And most people would tell you that the quarterback class for next year is a stronger one. So I think that was the strategy there for the Lions in this draft. roll it back with Goff one more year. And if he does well and we make the playoffs, great, we'll stick with him. If not, we'll have the draft capital to move up to get the quarterback we want next year.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I really liked the Lions' first day of the draft, but I feel like the rest of this draft, they kind of fumbled the bag. I mean, you're looking at guys like Kirby Joseph, who I think is a strong safety at best, and I don't think he's a great one. Josh Pascal, I feel like there were better options on the board. James Mitchell was a solid grab at tight end in round 5, but I mean, still he's probably just like a tight end 2 upside, which I mean works next to TJ Hawkinson. But I just feel like they didn't get a lot of quality contributors that they could have gotten, and I think it's going to hurt them. But ultimately, when you look at this Detroit offense, DJ Chark, Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's a very good receiving core. I know Jameson Williams isn't going to be coming back into the NFL until, he might be injured and wait 6 weeks, but this guy is going to have the speed to at least contribute as a deep threat right away. I think he's someone that is going to be a lot better than some of your other deep threats that have come into the league, like the Jalen Ragers and the Henry Ruggs. I think he offers a lot more just natural ability and just immediate readiness. I think he's going to be ready by week 1. That's what the medicals seem to indicate from all reports. So, if they get those 3 as a receiving unit after kind of just trotting out Amon-Ra St. Brown and Quintez Cephas last year, I mean, that's a huge step. TJ Hawkinson, probably a top 10 offensive line, a great running back duo in DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. This is a very good offense. And, Jared Goff isn't a terrible quarterback. So I wouldn't be surprised if this offense is one of the better offenses in the NFL. I don't think it's going to be, this world-beating offense. I still think the defense has issues for this team, but adding in the pass rush with Aiden Hutchinson, hopefully getting Okudah back and healthy with Aaron Glenn's system helping him out, I think this team is going to make a major step forward. I'm not saying playoffs, but I do think that this is a team that's going to go from, a very disappointing, awful year to about 7-win team next year.
Yeah, they're definitely improved. The Vikings are better. And just sticking with the division, I think the Packers had a really bad draft. I don't know what they're doing. I don't see how they're going to compete for a championship next year. Maybe Rodgers is good enough to win the division, but their receiving core here is just nothing too special. And you single it on one guy, and you're going to be able to stop them in the playoffs. So if I'm a Packers fan, if I'm Aaron Rodgers, I'm definitely concerned.
Absolutely. And, before we dive into the rest of this class, I do want to discuss DeAndre Hopkins suspended 6 games for performance-enhancing drugs. This is a tough blow to Arizona. I was already kind of on the fence for them. I know you're a lot higher on them than I am, but I was kind of struggling to see them be a run-it-back team. I thought this was going to be a big season for the Arizona team. I thought maybe if there were struggles, Cliff's going to be out. Steve Keim probably gets fired. They did trade for Marquise Brown. That's going to help out their deep passing ability, get into that offense a little bit. But, first, assessment on the DeAndre Hopkins suspension. Second, what do you think of the Marquise Brown trade? And third, what are your thoughts on the Cardinals after all these moves and losses?
Yeah, I mean, I think they had to have known the suspension was coming because that's why they made the trade for Brown. He's great, deep threat. He's no DeAndre Hopkins. Look what happened to this team last year at the end of the regular season. They could have won the West. They choked down the stretch because Hopkins was hurt. They were terrible in the playoff game versus the Rams. So that's a huge loss for them. 6 games is a lot of games. I think they could still be a playoff team in the wild card, but I don't, I'm not sure they can compete with the Bucks and the Rams. So it's definitely not going to be as exciting and as easy as it was last season for them to make the playoffs.
Absolutely. Now, the only thing that really works into their favor, in spite of all these situations, is the fact that, the NFC is weaker. I mean, Seattle was already not making playoffs last year, but they lose Russell Wilson, so that's going to play into their favor. You have the issues of Green Bay getting weaker. You have the NFC East still kind of up in the air in terms of talent there. Amari Cooper gone. Philadelphia still riding with Jalen Hurts. There's questions there. And, the NFC South, I mean, Sean Payton's gone from New Orleans. Like, there's a lot of opportunity in teams that are kind of losing weapons. I mean, Gronk, we don't even know yet for Tampa Bay. They drafted a tight end round 4, so maybe they're moving on, or not necessarily moving on, but maybe Gronk's moving on and they are adapting for that. So, there's plenty of holes in the NFC now that weren't there prior years, and I think as a whole, the AFC NFC gap just kind of grew wider in terms of just overall collective strength. I still think Tampa probably going to be the best team in the NFL, but when you look at this, the opportunities there for Arizona to maybe miss a couple of steps and still make playoffs in the NFC. Do you think that they're still in the contention to possibly win their division, though?
I gotta say, the Rams will probably get off to a good start. So I'm gonna say no, because just because of the suspension. If Hopkins was suspended, I would say they did have a chance. 49ers, I think, will take a step back. New quarterback, so it's just going to be different. So they'll still be in contention for a wild card at least, I think.
And the other big signing is Tyrann Mathieu signing with the Saints officially. It had been rumored for a little bit. There had been talks about it happening. He just signed about 10 minutes ago, something like that. And he's now officially a member of the Saints. Mathieu can't be undersold. He's a great, valuable piece to a defense, one of the most highly intelligent NFL players on that side of the ball, especially at the safety position. What do you think this does for the Saints in terms of just overall team outlook for next season?
Mathieu back to Louisiana. Of course, he went to LSU. I really don't get this signing. I mean, the Saints think they're to compete. I don't know. I guess Mathieu didn't have a market, because he's, to me, someone who should be on a contender. I don't think this really makes any difference. I think the Saints are going to be really bad next year. Probably going to be picking towards the top of the draft, if I had to guess.
Interesting. Are you just not sold on Winston, or what's the short calling for them?
Yeah, I'm not sold on Winston, but I think without Sean Payton, they're going to be pretty atrocious, at least this first year under the new regime.
I understand that. So, while we're on the topic, Chris Olave to New Orleans there at number 11. They also took Trevor Penning at number 19. They added some additional pieces, but overall they just had 5 picks in this draft. What do you think of the impact of Chris Olave and Trevor Penning immediately for the Saints team?
I don't know. I don't know if Jameis is going to be able to play the whole season. I think he's going to get hurt. Is Simeon still there? I think we're going to see a lot of Trevor Simeon.
No, they got Andy Dalton as their backup.
Okay, that's high quality, man. Yeah, I don't know. When you get these young receivers, you either want like an established veteran who is like going to be there for the long term. I don't think that's Jameis. Or you want a young quarterback so they can grow together. And I don't think you have either of those. So I think it's going to be a little tricky, especially as they try to figure out what this offensive identity can be.
I feel that. And, you talked about it a little bit earlier, but I feel like we should dive back into it. The New York teams, will start out with the Giants, had some tremendous day one drafts. Some interesting picks for the rest of this draft class for them. But ultimately, what were your thoughts on the Giants draft? What are your expectations for Thibodeau and Neal from year one? And, what are your thoughts on the day 2, day 3 selections that this team made?
Well, love Thibodeau pick. I texted you, of course. I would have picked Aquanu there because I thought he was the better offensive lineman. I knew Neal higher. And then the Panthers were going to take they were going to take an offensive lineman there. I don't think they were going to go with the edge rusher. And then you could have Thibodeau. But, I'm concerned about, how much wear and tear is there on Neal. Played some major games, major time minutes, 3 different positions in college. And I just always worry about that with the Alabama guys when they come to the pros. But we'll see how he does at right tackle. Everything about it, you should say, should be good. Thibodeau, they haven't had a good defensive end that they've drafted since like Justin Cox. So long overdue to get somebody in here that's going to be able to get some pass. So they needed that. Second day, I don't know what they're doing. They have Darius Slayton on the roster and Sterling Shepard. Both of those guys are going to miss like 10 games. They also have Slayton. They got Kadarius Toney, who's going to miss a bunch of games. So then they're like, well, we'll just take another receiver with our second-round pick. So now you got a full receiver room of 5 receivers at minimum here. So to me, this guy's going to be on special teams that they're drafting in day 2. I don't know. It just didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
They could have maybe took a chance on one of those quarterbacks later on as a backup or whatever, and they didn't. They did get another offensive lineman, which I did like later on. They got a tight end. They needed a tight end because Evan Ingram's gone now, but he wasn't that great to begin with. So I don't know. It was very head scratching. They come out really good on day 1, and then the rest of it's kind of like, where are we going here? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I like Wan'Dale Robinson, but the pick itself was a little surprising. I feel like the need was in question. I feel like the overall impact that he would have is in question. But, if the Toney rumors are legitimate and Sterling Shepard is, kind of out the door in terms of just his contract's not very long, then it makes sense if you're kind of using this as we really love this guy. Let's give him a year to kind of get acclimated, and then he's our full-time starter. Sure, whatever. You can kind of buy it. I do think that they should have gone quarterback with that 3rd-round pick. Getting him Malik Willis there, I think would have been extremely enticing for that offense, especially with guys like Mike Kafka and Ryan Dable to kind of, turn him into that. But whatever, they didn't like him. They didn't take him. Makes sense.
The best thing from day 1, though, is they declined Daniel Jones' 5th-year option. So
sounds like they're all in on quarterback next year, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. Joshua Zudu, I do like. I think moving him into guard is good. Cordell Flott, I did not like the pick. I thought that he was an okay slot corner for LSU. I didn't dislike his tape, but I mean there were better options on the board, so I really disliked it from that regard. Daniel Bellinger at tight end, solid. I think he's one of those dependable, high upside guys that could potentially develop into something. Dane Belton's okay. Mike McFadden's okay. I didn't like Marcus McKeithen, but I do really like their 6th-round pick of Darian Beavers. I think this was a steal for them. Great run defensive linebacker, nice size, nice frame, safety background, edge background, plays linebacker full-time now for Cincinnati, now going to New York. I think, in terms of just getting value to this linebacker room, you have Tate Crowder, you have Blake Martinez, who are hopefully going to be good starters next year. But, Blake Martinez coming off an injury, Tate Crowder was the best linebacker last year, but he wasn't always perfect. Like, there were still plenty of errors. So getting Darian Beavers in there, at least having him as a rotational linebacker, I think is huge for this team, and I think it was a great grab here on day 3. So now we flip over. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, day 3 is pretty good. See how many impact players they can get in this. Day 2 was a little, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and so now we flip over to the other New York team, and that is the New York Jets, who had 3 first-round picks. I think dominated with all of them. Ahmad Gardner at 4, Garrett Wilson at 10. You're probably thinking to yourself, okay, that's good picks, but they need an edge rusher. Well, they go up and get Jermaine Johnson the 2nd at 26. I mean, from first round alone, they had a great draft. What are your thoughts on this class, here in the first round, and then we'll talk about some of the other picks that they made later on.
Well, they definitely, went for positions of need. So I got to give them kudos for that. You could question, did they take the right receiver at that spot? Time will tell, but Wilson to Wilson sounds pretty good. Gardner, many had him as the best cornerback in the draft. So they get their guy there. I think maybe it's a bit of a reach to take him at 4. We shall see. But because they could have got one of the other edge rushers, but it ended up working out well for them because they, like you mentioned, they trade up. They get Jermaine Johnson the 2nd with the 26th overall pick. And that was, pretty good there, great move there, and then to start off the second round, you're getting Brees Hall, putting him with you know their pick from last year, Carter. I think that's going to be a really dynamic backfield for sure.
Absolutely. Brees Hall is going to dominate for New York. I mean, Michael Carter is going to get his touches. Don't get me wrong. I think he's still a very good back, but Brees Hall is probably one of the best running backs in this class, if not the best. I really love the selection for New York. I thought that, I think he's going to dominate. I think, working in that San Francisco type running game, it's going to be huge for him, and he's just going to absolutely tear up defenses. Getting Zach Wilson lighter boxes, that makes it super easy for him in the passing game. I think this Jets offense is extremely exciting. That Max Mitchell pick is interesting to me because we've heard a lot of rumors about Mekhi Becton potentially never wearing a Jets uniform again, is what we've heard.
Or is he retiring, or they're going to trade him?
I guess, possibly trading. I guess he was up in weight. There were some questions about what's going to happen.
He hasn't played, so he's
probably not. I think he's going to stick around. I think he's fine, but there's rumors of it that he could not, be the long-term answer. So getting a guy like Max Mitchell, I think, is a good pick. More than likely he's a right tackle, so it moves George Fant back to left tackle if they kind of decide to roll with him. But both tackles from New York, Mekhi Becton and George Fant, are guys that have had kind of questions about their long-term future. George Fant last year, his contract may not want to pay out the money that he deserves if you're the Jets. And then Mekhi Becton, needs to stay healthy, show his durability. So this is going to be an interesting play out. I think this is a pick that, if he doesn't see the field, it's probably more of a good thing for the Jets, but it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And then Michael Clemens, round 4, another guy that I kind of like, nice, powerful defensive end. Really worked well on that Texas A&M defensive line. A little bit up there in age, but still just very dependable guy that you can rotate all over, and I think he fits extremely well for that Jets defensive scheme.
With him, it's a high risk, high reward pick, I think, because he was off the field issues. He was rested twice last year within 3 months. And you mentioned he's a little older, so we'll see. If he's on the field, he's going to make a positive impact, though, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And, working with Saleh, I mean, it makes the defensive end job so much easier, it seems, because, he was getting anyone at least like 6 sacks last year on San Francisco whenever he had like Kerry Hyder as his best defensive end, and he put up like 9 sacks and then got paid at Seattle. So I'm excited to see what happens here. Getting Jermaine Johnson, having Carl Lawson back, getting Michael Clemens, having John Franklin Myers. That Jets defensive line is going to be extremely exciting. Ahmad Gardner and Bryce Hall working opposite of each other is a very underrated young cornerback duo. I'm excited to see this Jets defense. I'm excited to see this Jets team. I wouldn't be surprised if they're one that makes a major jump this next season.
So you think the Dolphins are the worst team in the division now? Your Super Bowl pick from last year. And I thought they should have tried to get one of these quarterbacks for a backup, or try to bring in a Mayfield or something.
Yeah, it might be the Dolphins. It still could be the Jets, but it could be the Patriots. I'm not ruling it out.
What did you get the Patriots draft? I didn't think they really did anything too spectacular.
Yeah, I think Cole Strange will work out. I'm willing to trust and be optimistic in that regard. But for the rest of this draft, I like some of the picks. You know me, I really like Pierre Strong Jr. I really like Andrew Stuber late. But when you look at Tyquan Thornton, he's got speed, he's got nice size, some great separation skills, but can he consistently win in the NFL working opposite of the speed? I think it's going to be something that takes time to develop. Cole Strange, I think, will be fine, but if he plays even close to Shaq Mason's level, then that's just a neutral move. Like, that doesn't necessarily move your team upward. Marcus Jones, I think he's going to redshirt because Jonathan Jones is still there. Sounds like they're kicking Jonathan Jones out, which I don't love, but I think Marcus Jones himself is good. Jack Jones, I don't think he's going to be a factor. Overall, I just feel like this draft class was disappointing for the Patriots. And I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, you got to trust Bill. You got to trust Bill. Bill's not that great of a drafter. Like, he's great at finding bargain values in free agency and in trades and getting guys like that to contribute at a higher level than they ever did in their past teams. But in terms of the draft, he's had some good picks, but overall, I mean, there's been plenty of whiff draft classes, so it's fair to assess it how you view it before and not say, oh, it's Bill, it's going to work out. And a class like this with the opportunities they had on the board, I felt like it was okay, probably below average.
So give me your analysis here of the playoff team that had the best draft pick that you think this person's going to come in order to actually make a tremendous impact of the playoff teams. And then after that, I think we should go over what we both think is the steal of the draft, because we both have one player that I think is going to make a major impact next season. But give me, playoff teams. So probably looking at, basically just the first round picks there to see which team's going to have, which player's going to have the biggest impact.
Yeah, so I think when you're looking at it, if I could go with a team that maybe didn't make playoffs, but they're a playoff team for sure, it'd be the Ravens. I love their first round, and I love their draft as a whole. But when I'm looking at teams that made playoffs last year, that I think this pick is going to, just absolutely set them over the top. I mean, I really love the Chiefs' first round of getting Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis added to a unit that absolutely needed the help. Their cornerback room was, rough last year. Charvarius Ward was good, but he's now in San Francisco. So you needed a corner to kind of step in and help out that unit. I think Trent McDuffie's going to do that extremely well. He's one of the more pro-ready corners in this class. I think that's a great get. And then George Karlaftis, with his tremendous power and pass rush upside, you needed pressure off the edge. They were running Chris Jones at the edge because they just didn't have an answer for someone to play defensive end. Frank Clark was like your best option, and he's just no longer the same player, not even close to what he used to be. So getting George Karlaftis in that spot, getting Trent McDuffie at the cornerback position, I mean, those are huge picks. I like McDuffie a little bit more. I think he's just the solidified, safe pick, and I think the Chiefs absolutely need that.
Absolutely. Now for the bubble playoff teams, you mentioned the Ravens. Kyle Hamilton dropping to 14 makes no sense, but great for the Ravens. And they come back to get Linderbaum. I mean, centers is 100% success rate, drafted in the first round. The last 20 to be drafted re-signed with the team, which is tremendous. And then the other pick that I kind of liked, to get your analysis here on the player, is Zion Johnson to the Chargers. I thought they definitely needed somebody in the offensive line there. So what do you think about what those two teams did?
Yeah, I think Zion Johnson was a great add to this team. You look at what the offensive line was last year. They made some major strides adding in Rashawn Slater and Corey Linsley, but there was still much needed protection. And Zion Johnson is going to be a very good guard for the Chargers team, assuming he stays healthy. I think that's a great add. I thought it was something that could have happened. I thought they would be in on tackle, but I said, don't rule out Zion Johnson as a potential option. They need right guard. They also could potentially look at him to play tackle. So I'm interested to see what Zion Johnson does for the Chargers, but I think it was a very good pick for them, and I'm very interested to see the play out because I think that's a great selection in that regard. And then another pick, second round, but still something that I really like for a playoff team that I wanted to mention as well. Cam Jurgens to the Philadelphia Eagles, I think, is one that's going to really pay off big time down the road. Jason Kelsey said on Bleacher Report's live stream that this was his choice of his replacement at the center spot. He really liked his game. He thought that he reminded him a lot of himself. Cam Jurgens, great, tremendous mover in open space, makes plays, makes just incredible downfield blocks, pulls like no other. I mean, this is a stud center, and working a year under Jason Kelsey as a redshirt, I think he's going to pay off extremely well for him, learning from one of the greats of the game. I like that pick, and I think when we're looking at it 3-4 years from now, we're going to say, man, what a great value grab there in round 2.
Now, definitely a lot of value there, and there's some value in this pick, but I just think it was a reach. I think there's a lot of pressure on Trayvon Walker here. I don't think he's not the best defensive end, in my opinion, in this draft, and he goes number 1 overall. But the Jaguars are heading in the wrong direction, which is hard to say because they've been in the wrong direction now for 2 years.
Yeah, I didn't love the Aiden Hutchinson idea at number 1, but I did have Kayvon Thibodeau as my number 1 edge rusher in this class. So I thought that the Jaguars kind of messed up passing on him so early. I do think Trayvon Walker probably has some tremendous upside. I mean, he does it all except pass rush extremely well, and I don't think he's a bad pass rusher. I think that's kind of understated. Like, it's underrated for his game now because a lot of people just look at the stats. I mean, he's solid. He's got some good ability, but he still needs to make some major strides to do it at the NFL level. And if Jacksonville can develop that, yeah, I mean, the pick makes a lot of sense, and it'll probably work out to be a great selection. But there's a lot of risk involved with that, and a guy like Trayvon Walker, you know, there's definitely going to be some expectation. You know, if he's a dependable run stuffer who gets about 4 sacks a season, that's going to be looked at as a bust from the number 1 pick. So if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, you need to be 100% confident that you're going to develop him into the pass rusher that he is. I assume they are, but we'll see because, I mean, there's still that risk that he doesn't make that next step as a pass rusher.
I want to ask you about the Bills' second-round pick of James Cook, because last year you wanted them to draft Piron. You said that was probably the missing piece. So they got him as a running back here. What do you think his upside is here for this season and long term?
Yeah, it wasn't Piron for me, but I don't remember which back it was. But I like James Cook. I think, he's got some great speed, great receiving ability, works well in open space. You can see
it was Najee Harris. I don't know why I said
Najee Harris. But yeah, James Cook, I think, is someone that is going to be very exciting in that offense. You look at just the ability as a receiver alone. I think he's the best receiving back in this class. But then if you add some weight to him, if you get 10, 15 pounds on him, I think he could be an every down back. And I think, yes, there's Zach Moss. Yes, there's Matt Breida in that backfield. But ultimately, you're looking for someone to be like your go-to running back. And I think James Cook has that potential. He's great in open space. He's got great vision. He makes some big plays on the ground. Getting him in that Buffalo offense where, you can never focus on the running back because you have Josh Allen, who is a tremendous runner and great downfield passer. I mean, there's just so much capability there. And I think that's just huge for Buffalo to get a running back here. And I like you said, I've been big on they need to get a running back that's kind of going to make that next step for the offense. And I mean, James Cook right now probably doesn't entirely do that, but if he can add some weight and be a full-time running back where he's taking carries up the middle extremely well, then I think this offense is going to be nearly impossible to game plan for.
All right. How about the last pick in the draft? Purdy, Iowa State quarterback going there. The very last pick, I don't know if he's going to make the team. And then earlier in that round, Skylar Thompson, the quarterback from Kansas State, went to Miami Dolphins. Any thoughts on those two, or anybody in the 7th round that was picked that we should keep an eye on? So maybe,
well, if we know anything about Kyle Shanahan, this means Brock Purdy is going to start over Trey Lance, and then everyone's going to be saying, look, it's obvious Trey Lance is better, but this is Shanahan being Shanahan. But, on the real, I think Brock Purdy is an okay backup. I don't hate it. I think he probably replaces Jimmy once Jimmy is gone, whether that's this offseason or in the future. Skylar Thompson's a guy that I think is going to win over some hearts in the preseason. I don't know if he's going to be a long-term answer, but he's got tremendous pocket poise. He's got some very nice accuracy and efficiency as a passer that I think he's going to do well. And I wouldn't be surprised if he sticks on this roster for Miami. I think he's going to have some great performances in the preseason. I don't think he starts. I don't think Tua is going to be so bad that they're just like, we need to move on from him like this offseason or this season. But I do think he's going to struggle. But ultimately, I think that Skylar Thompson's a pretty good quarterback and someone that people should keep an eye on because I think he is going to stick around the league for quite some time. He's got some nice talent.
Fair enough. All right. Give me some names here to be keeping a lookout on as we head to the next draft class.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about that probably Friday, but Bryce Young and CJ Stroud highlight the quarterback class. There's some other guys that are going to be in play. There's always a riser, so keep an eye on that. But CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, definitely guys to keep an eye on. Will Anderson, probably the best guy in this class. Great edge rusher out of Alabama, just completely dominant off of the edge. Probably going to be a top 3 pick at the very least. Just an absolute stud, menace pass rusher. Probably one of the best prospects we've seen all time for the edge rushing position. He's that good. Offensive tackle class is going to be kind of weak. There's some guys that could potentially blossom into something, but right now there's no really solidified first rounders, which is going to be concerning for the group. Kayshawn Bout and Jackson Smith and Jigba for the wide receiver room. Bijan Robinson at running back. Michael Mayer at tight end. There's going to be some fun skill players. And then on the defense, Miles Murphy for Clemson, Brian Brisset, Jalen Carter out of Georgia, Elias Ricks, cornerback at Alabama now. There's going to be a lot of studs in this class on the defensive side yet again. I'm excited to get covering all of it. Noah Sewell at linebacker, Panay's brother. So there's going to be some studs all over this draft. It's going to be a really fun draft year. Unfortunately, I don't think we're doing it here on Destination Draft Day, but I'm still gonna keep doing coverage. I'm sure Nick will have his thoughts somewhere as well. So keep your eyes on it, and we're very excited for this class because this is going to be a stacked draft class.
Is Clemson going to bounce back this year, Michael?
I don't know. It rides on DJ Uiagalelei. I mean, that is a quarterback that showed a lot of potential, showed a lot of promise, and just didn't make that step. Kind of regressed even as the starting quarterback. So either he has to make that next step or he's going to have to get out of the way for Cade Klubnik, who will probably take the job if things don't change for Clemson. I think they're going to be very good. I think the talent's there for them to be a playoff team. It's just going to ride on if that quarterback play is good enough to kind of make that team, kind of get there, or are they going to just be another 9-3, 10-2 type year where it's fine, but it's not up to Clemson standards.
Well, college football is back this month with some spring football games. So before you know it, we're talking about the playoffs again. And it seems like USC may factor into something this year for a change.
USC is shaking up the world of college football. They have offered $2 million to Jordan Addison to come play wide receiver for them, transferring from Pittsburgh. So, I mean, the NFL is all about salary cap, but for college football, there's no top set for it. So anyone can just offer anything. We're going to see some crazy NIL stuff next year because I think teams are just starting to realize just how absurd they can go with it. So keep an eye on the NIL situation. If there's no regulation set on it, then this thing's going to blow up, and college football is going to become a battle of who has the most money very soon.
I think it's going to help Oregon in the long run because they got a lot of money and a lot of jerseys.
Oregon, USC, you'd think Texas, but they apparently haven't been, shoveling out money as well.
They need a coach, Michael. I think it's going to be the last year of Sarkisian.
Possibly. We'll see. But, Alabama's going to continue to dominate. This is going to be a crazy situation, but we're running a little bit over on time. Don't want to get yelled at by Chris Landry. So thank you to everyone who tuned into this episode. Thank you to ChrisLandryFootball.com for the platform to do this show on. And we'll see you guys on Friday. Have a great week. Take care. Let me get the mouse over there. There we go.